All right, folks. So this continues our interview series regarding design, and today I have Princess Roy with us. So hi, Princess.
Hi.
Okay. So as I stated, it's not going to be too complicated. You're not going to be interrogated or waterboarded. Hopefully not. But it's just to enable you, give us an insight into what you do. So at the moment, you're presently studying industrial design. So my question is, what made you choose or decide to study industrial design?
Okay. Well, I've always been interested in design, and for a little bit, I was also interested in psychology.
Okay.
So, and I'm also like a forward planner, so I decided on design. No, actually, I decided on architecture when I was like 12-ish
Hmm.
and just starting secondary school. And then like I discovered that industrial design was a thing. Like you could create and design like everything basically that people use throughout their lives, just like products. And I thought that, wow, that is cool. So I kind of switched my focus to that. So I think it's just the idea that you can design these things that people are just kind of daily using. That's what
Hmm.
initially got me into industrial design.
Okay, that's interesting. So you did your A levels, your key stage five. What made you decide to attend Loughborough University in particular? I mean, there are other choices out there. What's so special about Loughborough?
Um, okay, so actually I did hires and advanced hires because I'm actually Scottish.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so what made me choose Loughborough? I think there was a lot of research going into it.
Hmm.
Um, it's just kind of me and my brother, what we're like. We do a lot of research into what we want to do with our lives and career. So Loughborough, from the research, it was Loughborough and Brunel that were like identified as the best in the UK.
Okay. Well, at that time
And
anyway.
then, yeah, at that time, 4 years ago. And I didn't want to go to London, really. And honestly, they seemed pretty similar level. Didn't want to
Hmm.
go to London. So I visited Loughborough. Um, love the look of it. Love the fact that it's like a campus that you can probably properly go out and do things on.
Hmm.
And then when I was comparing it to other universities, not just like comparing it to Brunel, it was the fact that I kind of liked what the students were putting out in their final
Hmm.
year. So like comparing it to somewhere like um, Strathclyde,
Hmm.
where you're a bit more engineering focused and there's
Yeah.
less the consideration of aesthetics. You're doing more electronics and stuff. I preferred to go down the more aesthetic route.
Okay. So let's go back to the your pre-years before coming to Loughborough. What was the actual inspiration? Why design? Because you said that you were interested in architecture. Did you have family members that were in that field? What was the actual inspiration to go into industrial design or towards design in general?
Wow, I don't really think there's like one point of inspiration. I think I was just always really interested in design, like just design for design's sake. Like in all my hobbies as well, everything I do is designing something.
Hmm.
So a bit of a sidetrack, but I'm also interested in world building and also designing constructed languages. So like everything I do, there's a bit of design in it. I think it's
Okay.
just the act of creating stuff that I really like.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, that's interesting. Okay, so let's talk about your learning journey to date. So talk us through, I mean, your experiences when you were introduced into the world of design. I mean, what was your perception going into it, and what was your perception afterwards once you completed your first year of studies?
Okay. So going into it, um, I'll start off from. So you're saying just before I went to uni, and
Hmm.
then okay. So I've done design and manufacture and graphic communication at secondary school. And design and manufacturing is basically just a reskinned version of product design, because we had different types of like hires at that point, so they created a new system. And so from there I'd learned like not as much about aesthetics necessarily, but you learn about the basics. So going in, I thought I was going to come in, design some really cool products.
Okay.
And that was kind of going to be it. And then during first year, you learn a bit more about like the other aspects of design, like industrial design studies one, where you're learning about product semantics. So you dig a little bit deeper. So after first year, I don't really know. I think after first year, I definitely had more of a feel of the kind of designer that I wanted to be. So definitely going into second year and mid through second year, I decided who I wanted to be as a designer a little bit more.
So that's an interesting point. So what did you discover about yourself as a designer, and what kind of like, lit up that light bulb to say, okay, this is what I really want to focus on in terms of design? What area? So could you give us an insight in terms of that?
Yeah, I can try. It's really hard to go back to like between first year and second year mindset, because I only remember the outcome of that, which is that I decided to focus on experiences instead of just pure design. So in that way, I mean things like there's a little bit of a touch of it on my first year design project, which was a toaster design. And I went down the idea of like a laser toaster where you take time out of your day to kind of come here, sit down, watch this toaster do its thing. In that way that you're taking time out of your day, you're not just using it as part of like your routine, you're doing something else and creating a different experience. So there was a little bit of a touch of that. And I think I delved into that more, the idea of creating experiences. Yeah, like I didn't really get industrial design studies 2 and the product semantics thing in first year, but in second year, industrial design studies 2, not 1, really drew me in, because we were talking way more about experiences and it was less methodical. It was more like, this is what you should try and emulate, or this is the kind of feeling and things that you're going to go for, rather than talking through like textbooks based stuff, which is just not really what you want to do in a design school. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Nice to know. All right, so you've progressed from first year into the second year. So what were some of the challenges, I mean, from your progression from first year into second year leading into the final year? What were some of the things that you believe were the hurdles to overcome to get to into the final year?
I think for me, the hurdles have been mechanics, for one. It's like a giant hurdle to me, which is so strange because it's similar to electronics in that, you've got mathematical formulas that you can do, but I just don't get it. Like, it doesn't translate well to me. Whereas electronics, I'm fine, I can do that. So that was a big hurdle. Yeah. And then in second year, I definitely decided that I was going to make the projects that we had work for me. So it was less about trying to meet the requirements of these projects, but instead thinking about it as, well, if I'm a designer and I have a style and I have a way that I want to design, let's just make everything fit that, so that it properly fits into like the portfolio of work and everything like that. So going into it with that mindset, it was actually easier than in first year, because now it's like, you know what you want to do. You're not just designing random things anymore. You've got an actual focus. So it made second year easier to have that focus, for sure. I think the other thing that was hard in second year was DMT, which is design and manufacturing technologies. Now, it wasn't too hard to understand the principles of manufacturing technologies. This plastic goes here because it does this, and you need all of that. I think it was the manufacturing part So for me as a designer, I'm much more interested in like the first stage of design, or that first dive into the double diamond. And I'm a lot less interested in the actual manufacturing and actually sitting there trying to make something.
Yeah, which yeah, it kind of makes sense, because if we're looking at the heart of industrial design, you're more or less the dresser. So I think I was reading this article, and I think this gentleman architect really explained it best, that the engineering designer is kind of like, okay, let's get everything together and see whether it works or not. So the primary mission of an engineering designer is to ensure that, okay, we've got this concept, we've looked at, you know, the research and the technology that exists, and this is how we can put everything together to yield this type of functionality. Then engineer will come in to enhance the, you know, the mechanical parameters and the electronic parameters, and to ensure that, you know, everything makes sense from a manufacturing perspective. And the industrial design is, okay, you know, we've got everything together. How do we make it? How do we dress it up for market? So it kind of makes sense that, okay, a lot of industrial design students will prefer being, you know, doing front end design rather than back end design, where the manufacturing and optimization and all that mumbo jumbo comes into play. So that's quite interesting. Okay, so yeah, that's nice. What about the things that you enjoy? Because we can't just talk about challenges. What about the successes?
Right, the successes. I would say to date, my favorite bit that I've done, aside from placement in kind of my university career, is my final year design project. Wait, my second year design project. Yeah, DP2. Yeah, I think honestly, even better than FYDP, my final year one that I'm doing right now, it just felt a lot better because I believed in it a lot more than what I'm doing right now. So I designed something for kind of sufferers of anxiety, where you have this little thing that you've got little pebbles on, and then you can pick up a pebble and kind of communicate with the device through the pebble and leave memos to yourself. And then it lights up with the emotion that you were feeling, so you can look over your week at the end with different colors. And that just kind of really hit the spot of what I'm trying to do with the whole creating experiences, making people step out of their day to actually do something that's good for their well-being. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of research in that. And I've also twisted now a more research focused role that I'm going to look for instead of just design. And other successes, so speaking about research, is I'm always quite good at design research, and I've always also enjoyed those. So right now, I've chosen design research as my optional module. And I'm doing a piece that aims to combine a set of different like positive design frameworks into one, to see if there's anything out there that actually ties well-being to product features and product characteristics. And that's really interesting to me.
Okay, no, that's interesting. All right, so you finished second year. You're now ready for to do your industrial placement. So talk us through that. How did it go?
Yeah, it went brilliant, actually. Finding the placement was all right. So I got a placement by Christmas time. That was because I was really on it. I created my portfolio before I came back to like second year.
No, that's
yeah, because that's when we start.
Unlike certain people that left it to the very last minute. So that's very good. Well done.
Thank you. So yeah, so got the placement, and it wasn't really a design focused placement, to be honest. It was a research focused one.
Okay.
And it was entirely like up to me. Like they were very open. Yeah, it was like a period of change for that company. So I worked for Geldwen, who do windows, doors, and stairs.
Okay.
So I went in as well. My title was design engineer, and then I changed that to consumer insight researcher because I was allowed to change it. And then we had another placement student that was an actual design engineer. So yeah, so I got to do a lot of research in that role, and I mean like hands-on research, going out, doing some contextual interviews that were meant to be ethnography, but you can't actually, it's too costly to do an ethnography, really, for that kind of company. So yeah, contextual interviews. I kind of took them through a whole series of insight generating interviews, and I got to host like ideation workshops, which was fun because it's not just you coming up with the ideas, but it's everyone in a room all together, kickstarting some ideas together. And then I got to do some validation interviews, like so work a little bit on the concepts to then go out and explore how users react to them. So I loved my placement. It was great doing all that research.
And what did you take out the placement? What do you really learn about yourself as a up-and-coming designer? And did it kind of like give an insight in terms of what you really want to specialize in leading to the final year?
Yes, it definitely did. So towards the end, I knew that I loved research and that had to be a big part of anything I did moving on. So going into final year, I made sure during my placement to do a bit of research. And I actually did like 2 literature reviews for my final year FYDP, which I just included as appendices because no one's going to read that. Based around designing something for mental well-being. So that's how I kickstarted that off, is with rigorous research, because I just love it, basically. Yeah, and then what I learned about myself, I guess it was good to have a chance to be truly independent. Yeah, go to a completely new place, Sheffield, didn't really know anyone there, had to find a place to live. Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting to learn to be independent and just have the chance to work properly, like do a 9 to 5 and see how it affects you. Yeah, I learned I actually do have hobbies that I can do.
All right, so let's talk about final year. So you've done your placement, you've had some life experiences, both socially and kind of professionally, if you can put in that context, and you return back to uni. So let's talk about FYDP. So was it a decision that you made in terms of your project during your placement, or was it something that you decided after your placement?
It was definitely something I decided after my placement. Like I had the groundwork for it a little bit, but I had to decide what the actual thing was going to be.
Okay, and what's your design project on? What is it about?
Okay, so it is about, in a roundabout way, it is about well-being.
Okay.
But as a pure descriptor, what it is a helpful tool for monitoring indoor garden plants.
Okay.
So you've got this, so you pick it up, it has a camera on it, and then you get, if you scan a plant, it shows you an augmented reality view of areas on the plant that aren't doing so well, or anything bad that's happening with the plant. And it kind of does it in a little bit of gamification where there's like little monsters attacking it and stuff. And it'll prompt you to go check on your plants. So even if there's nothing wrong with your plant, it'll still prompt you to go take time out of your day to go have a moment with however many plants you have. So that's the idea, was to create, again, a separate experience from your normal day-to-day. And with the prompt system, it's meant to enable you to go out and have a separate time, like every so often, so you don't just get bogged down in work and never check on your plants, never check on yourself as well.
Okay, that sounds interesting, because again, it sounds as if it's something that you could probably put a spin on that towards the agricultural industry. So that sounds quite interesting. So how do you kickstart this project then? What was the initial events that you had to consider leading into drafting your design specification?
So initially I was going to go down the path of some kind of product that combined, that made mindfulness into like an actual product instead of just like this theory or an app. And so it kind of morphed into this completely different thing. So yes, that's where it started off. And then there were kind of numerous consultations with FYDP tutors and everything like that. And people weren't really understanding the idea of a mindfulness product, like a 3D artifact. So it morphed into something that was more understandable towards a layperson. So yeah, I think kickstarting it and designing for the researching for the design specification, it was a lot of I did actually do some primary research as well. So I did user diaries, which I got people who had indoor garden plants to tell me what they did about, like, keep a diary for a week about any interactions you have with your plants. And then I also did some interviews with people who don't like to garden at all to see what it is about why they don't like to garden. So that was quite interesting as well. So that all kind of helped to inform the design specification.
Okay, that's interesting. And do you think, as a designer, research is essential?
Yes, I would definitely say that. And like, you can do anything that's research really, but some amount of research is essential.
Okay, because if I cast my mind back to, dealing and teaching, designers, they tend not to love research. I think that's one of the areas that they really, really hate. So would it be something that you will advise aspiring designers to really consider as an essential tool if they want to go into industrial design?
Yes, it is an absolute must.
Okay. All right. So you've finished with the front-endy bits, and you're now going into the second phase, which requires you to now review your design, improve your design towards the manufacturer. So talk us through the process at this point and where you are.
Okay, so at this point, so first of all, the first thing I needed to do was change my aesthetics, because they apparently weren't like top level design at that point. So did some new sketches, created a different mood board, changed up the aesthetics. And then from that, create a CAD model, and I've printed off a couple different things. So like, I've got a main product, and then it also comes with these stakes that you have to like stick into the plant as well. So I've printed different versions of those to kind of test and see how they fit in context in the scene, which is always a good thing to do. So how they fit inside of a plant pot. Are they too big? Is it too small? Is the information going to get across to people? Then I've also made some clay stands, which is apparently a different way of doing things, as my tutor says. But essentially, it's good because it allows you to change things as you go, as you're modeling with the clay. And then you can kind of test comfort and fit. If you're making a stand, you want to know that it's like it's a readable angle, if it's going to have something that's on all the time, as well as it's easy to take out and put in, and you don't have to fiddle trying to get things into the stand. And then I'm also planning to do some UX testing with some more people. Yeah.
How are you going to go? How are you doing that, considering the pandemic? What are the measures set in place for that?
So by UX, I really just mean UI. So it's all computer based.
Okay.
Done in Adobe XD.
Okay, cool. So how's it progressing to date? Are you close to finishing? Are there still any challenges that you still need to overcome to get there?
I think I need to do some UI testing, but in terms of physical challenges with the design, I haven't thought too much about manufacturing. Like, I've thought about it, but it's not completely decided, because things keep changing. Like the stakes that I mentioned, depending on how they're going to fit into the products they need to charge, And since I've changed the shape of them, that's going to change the mechanics of how things charge inside and the shape of the inside and internals as such.
Well, it's interesting that you've mentioned, you know, the elements that you hate at this stage. So mechanics, so you still need to consider those elements. You still need to consider the manufacturability of your product. So this kind of like, you know, always raises that argument that if you stripped away all these elements regarding, you know, the engineering fundamentals, so under the engineering umbrella, you know, your mechanics, your electronics, your understanding of technology and things like that. If you strip all those away, so let's assume that you came to this program and those elements weren't there, and you got to this stage, you were given this challenge, do you believe that you'll be able to get to where you are without these fundamentals?
No chance.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Okay. So as a designer, it's important. I'm very sure that you probably, you know, saw elements of that during your placement. That yes, the you know, the illustrative skills are important, but you still need to have an understanding of the fundamental engineering that governs that. So, for instance, we're talking about creative form. Okay, yeah, we can have all sorts of creative form, but how do you go about making those forms if you don't have an understanding of the technologies that exist to enable you, you know, imbue a product with the needed aesthetics that you want? So yeah, so that's quite interesting. So you've only got a few more weeks and you're done. No more assignments, none of that. So moving forward, once you finish, once you graduate, what's the next step? What's the next hurdle?
I mean, first I need to get a job.
Yeah.
But I've got some things in the background that may or may not happen. Like I've got one application to do research down in Cambridge, which seems to be kind of a tech hub in the UK, like aside from London, which I just don't want to live in London, so I look for the other techie places.
Okay.
Aside from that, I also did apply to do a PhD, and I've gotten into the PhD, but I haven't heard about funding yet, so I still need to wait on that.
Okay.
So these are kind of the options: of get a PhD and do that for 3 years, or get a job.
Yeah.
And then depending on the kind of job I get, like if I did get this one that I'm thinking that I did apply for in Cambridge, that's kind of the dream job because it's kind of doing sensory research and then you do get an input into the design as well. Then I'd probably stay there for like 10 years. Whereas if I got a different job, you know, I'd stay there for around 3 years, get the experience, and try and work my way up in other places.
That's interesting, because again, you did say that you really enjoy research. So I think you know, exploring opportunities in the work world that deals with a lot of research, or veering towards the academic route, doing a PhD, that kind of like makes sense, because again, with that, a lot of research, a lot of research, but again, you know, I think your persona fits that. So that's quite interesting. Okay, so this brings me to another element of our chat, which would be young young people who are considering doing design. What advice would you give to, you know, a young Black female, a young Black male that's, you know, considering or doesn't really know about design? What would you say to them? Would it be an area worth considering?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, so a little bit extra is I actually planned on going back to my secondary school and doing like a little presentation on design, because there's just not, you don't get a lot of people talking about design, especially where I'm from. There's a lot of talk about oil, about mathematics, engineering, but no one talks about design in terms of it as an actual job. Like there's so many different things you can do with design, And I think it's worth exploring as a career option. Like, it doesn't have to be industrial. You can do graphic design, there's web design, there's game design, there's all sorts of things. And I think you should just look into it. If you're thinking about being a creative, or thinking that you like engineering, but it's a bit maths heavy, come to design. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's very insightful, and hopefully, you know, you keep in touch, we keep in touch, so that at least when you graduate and you start getting a bit more hands-on, well, depending on whether you're going to do a PhD or whether you're going to, you know, join one of these technology hubs and be a researcher for them, at least that would be nice to at least have that continuity to kind of like, you know, okay, see where what you've studied and some of the interpersonal skills that you've developed has kind of like progressed into industry, and how things are playing along in there. So that'll be great. All right, so I finished your interrogation. So thank you very much for sacrificing, you know, a few minutes of your Sunday afternoon to, you know, have this discussion with me. And hopefully down the line we could probably, you know, do a Q&A with other people, other students. And yeah, so thank you for your time.
Okay, no problem.
And good luck with your projects. Hopefully everything comes together in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
All right.